All right, welcome back. Appreciate everyone who subscribed. If you haven't done that yet, press pause, hit that little red button down below, and we will get on with it. Also, if you'll leave comments, I will get back to you. Ask me questions, tell me whether you like it or not, and I will comment back. This is the second part of the Ngombe Ngulu build. The first part, we forged our Damascus, and now we are starting to forge the sword to shape. So you can see that I've done is I have tapered the end of the billet down a little bit, and now I'm going to go ahead and, since I have the end, kind of the dimensions I want, I'm going to forge that tip in. So the plan I have in mind at this point is that I'm going to forge that tip. I'm also going to forge the width of the billet to what I want it to be, and then I'm going to make sure that I have all the length. Remember in the last video I talked about needing 28 inches. I'm nowhere near that right now, so we still have a lot of drawing out to do, but I want to get the width dimensions right so that I'm not stretching this thing beyond what I need to. Now that I got that tip pretty much done, I'm going to move over to the press, and I'm going to squish it down a little bit, get the thickness back to what it needs to be, and then we're going to heat it up again, and we're going to work a little more on the dimensions of the length and the width. Now you remember this Ngombe Ngulu has a big old hook on the end of it, so what I've got to figure in is the radius that I'm going to have out on that hook, which is going to be about 4 to 5 inches is what I've got drawn. So you figure 4 to 5 inches, that hook is about a 2/3 of a complete circle almost. So you have to figure in, okay, what's 5 times pi or 4 times pi, somewhere in the 12 to 15 inch range for a complete circle. Now we're not using a complete circle, so I'm figuring that I need probably about 10 inches of length to make that hook out on the end. So I'm tapering down at least 10 inches because that hook is a smaller width than the rest of the sword. So that's what I'm doing here, getting that all forged out, and I can refine this a little bit later, but for now I'm just trying to figure that I need 28 inches. That's what you see right here, and I've got that now, so it's time to move on to forging the back part of the blade. There's those 2 spikes out just right past the handle. There's 2 raised spikes on the back side of the blade. So I'll start working on those, and that's going to give me a little bit more length as well. I'm drawing it out on the spine, and it's not going to give me a ton, but it'll give me a little bit. So looks like everything's going really well. I'm just going to work on those for a little while. There's not really a lot to this. It's just forging down a couple areas and leaving one area high. I had a little bit of a panic moment while I was doing this because I was worried that I started that first spike a little bit too far forward off of the tang area. And, looking back, I wish that I had put that first spike a little bit further back, maybe an inch or inch and a half, something like that. But it ended up working out. But every time that I forge down these areas like I am right here, it creates a swell on top, and then you have to turn the blade on its side and flatten it back out. It makes it look like you've made less progress than you thought you had. But after I get these 2 areas, these 2 dips forged down, then it'll be time to start working on the second dip. Now you can see that I've got those 2 spikes started, and right after that there's a 3rd dip and then a raised flat area. I'm not really sure what the purpose of that raised flat area is. I know they use these swords for hooking on the backside of someone's shield to pull it away from them, but it kind of makes the sword look like a giant can opener. But we're going to put it in there because that's what a Ngombe Ngulu has on it. Alright, now for the fun part. We're going to start bending the hook. The first few hits here are on the backside of that raised flat area. We want to leave that raised flat area alone, and then we can start bending the hook backwards. Now the back side of the hook is going to be a lot tighter radius than the inside of the hook, and that is really hard to do whenever this piece of steel is 2.5 to 3 inches, to bend it at a tight angle backwards. So it's going to take quite a few heat cycles to do that, but we'll get her done. I switch over to 6-pound hammer here, trying to get a little more work done faster. It's pretty awkward because I'm having to hold the handle pretty far back because of the heat, and then I'm forging out towards the end of this billet, so I'm really spread out. So at this point, I kind of realize I need to localize my heat. I don't need to be heating up this whole thing and being so spread out forging. So I get the rosebud torch, and we're going to keep the heat just in this one area. I let the forge do the majority of heating up, and then I'm going to just kind of keep one central area heated up with the rosebud. You can see that the top and the bottom of this billet are starting to cool down a little bit, so I don't have to worry so much about bending those areas as the hottest area on the billet. One thing that I got to keep in mind throughout this build is that this is still a 6-bar billet of Damascus, and we don't want any of those welds coming loose. So we don't want to work anything when it's too cold. That'll cause it to shear. So that being kept in mind the whole time, we definitely don't want to do anything too crazy or too fast and screw this up when we can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel at this point. Now you can see as I'm starting to try to bend this thing here that the billet is bending the other way as well. It's really hard to keep this thing square as I'm bending it. And as I pull it out, I lay it on the anvil, and you can see I thought about trying to straighten it up, but because of what I told you about trying to keep this thing hot, I didn't want to beat on it while it was that cold. So I'm going to heat the whole thing up, and then we're going to go at it again. One thing I'm definitely trying to do is not get in a hurry. I'm going to heat up this one little area, and then I'm going to take it slow as I'm trying to bend this. I don't want to go too fast, like I said earlier, so it's going to be small increments. And then also, as I'm starting to pull on this, I'm trying to make sure that I keep it nice and straight, because that first time it really bent badly off to the side. So I'm trying to avoid that again, because it's kind of hard to fix once you've done. So I'm making minor adjustments as I'm pulling it back towards me. I'm making minor adjustments left and right at the same time. Now that I've got that backwards bend the way that I want it, it's time to bend the inside radius of the hook. So I'm just using the horn of the anvil here, and I'm going to wrap this billet around the horn. It's going to take a few heats to do this, but I'm just going to work one section at a time. You can see the tip of the billet isn't hot. You can also see this billet is really heavy. It's about 3/8 thick at this point, and about 28 inches long. So that's a lot of steel to be holding one-handed. So you can see me picking it up with my hammer there to try to use more or less two hands to pick it up. The other thing that you constantly see me doing is straighten it back up. Just like any blade, the straighter that you can keep it throughout the process, the easier it's going to be. Another thing that I need to make sure I do is keep that raised flat area an actual raised flat area. Since we're going to have 6 bars running through this Damascus billet, we want them to run with each one of those spikes and with that raised flat area and taper off. That's why we're forging this thing to shape. It'd look funny if I ground out all of those areas and then you see the bars disappear because I ground them out. So I continue to try to separate the inside of the hook from that raised flat area. You can see it's starting to take shape. I'm also going to try to draw that flat area out just a little bit. I can do that because I have plenty of width, and when I grind this out, that raised flat area is going to be thinner than the center of the knife. You can see this is definitely taking me a while. I'm spending a lot of time trying to make the difference between that raised flat area and the inside of the hook be very distinguished. You can also see that where that raised flat area is, it's about 3 to probably 3 1/4 inches tall, and then it drops down pretty significantly down to probably 2 inches right after that. I know I've probably said this 100 times, but this billet was extremely hard to forge. You can see I'm trying to figure out how to get this thing where I can forge the top of that and hold on to the rest of it. I probably could have cut this off and maybe used some tongs or something, but that solid handle just makes things a lot easier to control. So as I continue to forge the hook around, you can see that I'm really far away from where I'm actually hitting, so I'm not able to hit it as straight on as I'd like to. I think I am, but I'm not. So the billet is actually twisting out there towards the edge of the hook, so I'm continually having to correct that. And it's also spreading, so it's just a matter of taking the issues that come up, correcting them, being patient, and continuing to work the hook around. So as you can see, as I try to bend that hook around, it keeps wanting to spread out on the backside, which is natural. That's what always happens when you try to bend something around a piece of pipe, around the horn of your anvil, or anything like that. Making U-bolts, the same thing happens. So I'm still having that problem with it trying to twist on me, and I just have to correct that as I go. So I got the hook pretty much shaped now, and I start to realize at this point that I really don't like the radius that I've created on the hook. So a good thing about having a bunch of junk laying around is I have a piece of 4.5 pipe that was laying around, and I keep it for something just like this. So I'll put that on my horn, and that's going to give me an inside radius of 4.5 inches, which ends up looking way better than just what the horn of the anvil was able to give me. So bend that around. It's not the sturdiest setup, but it ends up working pretty good. It gives me a much better looking hook out on the end. It's not so tight. So I'm real happy how that turned out. It makes me happy whenever I have junk laying around and then I actually end up using it. Now that we've got the sword forged to shape, we have to work on the cutting edge. So I'm going to start forging the bevels, and this is going to take a while. I mean, it's a long way up and around this sword, and we've got to do both sides. I'm not going to bore you with that. It's a lot of hammering, and it's pretty monotonous, and I don't think you really want to see that. So I decided at this point that I really don't like the back side of this thing, and I start refining those spikes to make them look a little more pronounced. And I also want to refine the area that leads back into the guard and to the tang area of the sword. So I just continue to work back towards the guard and towards the tang area. I'm not going to forge the tang on this because the tang would be small and all that weight would make it just want to bend over. So the thing I noticed on the first Ngombe Ngulu that I made was that the first 12-18 inches of the sword was really straight, and I really didn't like that. I think it looks a lot better if it's got a slight subtle curve to it. So that's what I'm doing right here. I'm just trying to bend that spine backwards, and that way that cutting edge has a nice long slope to it. I'm going to try to work on that raised flat area a little bit more. Try spreading it out with just some planishing blows right here. And then also I'm going to refine that dip that's in between the second spike and that raised flat area. That does it for the forging. All that's left to do is to normalize the blade. There's no way this thing is going to fit in my oven. It's way too wide. So I have to do this in the forge, and that's going to require me to heat one end of the blade and then heat the other end of the blade. That does it for this video. In the next video, we're going to work on grinding and assembling the blade. But please subscribe to my channel, click that red button at the bottom, and check out my Instagram and Facebook.